We are live. We are live. Welcome to college football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash that like button. If you like our content, share the video with your family and friends. Share it with your psychiatrist, your priest, your neighbor, your significant other. Share it across all your social media platforms. Welcome on in to the house, to the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. With your comments, with your phone calls, let's get it on. Now you all know Cloak and Dagger in the chat. You all know the rules. And make sure, because the little general is watching, the producer of the show, the moderator who rules with an iron fist, make sure you check out our merchandise store. Get the official mug. We've also have t-shirts at the merchandise store. You got your trucker hat. You go to the link in the description. Get your merchandise today. We have a little bit of a cleanup before we get to the main story. It sounds like the Pac-4, as we sit here tonight, is determined to save their conference, to rebuild it and keep the namesake of the Pacific Atlantic Conference. We shall see what happens. I think it's a long shot, But Oregon State's President Murthy spoke this evening. We're going to go through the email that the president sent out. First thing we got to do is we got to take an L here at Peek Around the Corner. We were tipped off that there was going to be a posting on that website for a Board of Trustees meeting that was going to happen sometime next week. It did not. It was supposed to happen. The posting was supposed to happen yesterday or today. It has not happened yet. Now, we don't even know if that meeting was going to be about whatever action or not, no action they're going to take on possibly handing in their withdrawal notice for the ACC by August 15th, which is Tuesday. But we were tipped off that they were going to post something, and it hasn't happened yet. So we start the show off with our L's. We also have a future win. We have a big win coming up as we are determined to go from Greg the Cooler to Greg the Heater. The Florida Gators. The Florida Gators. The Florida Gators have announced. Now, Jeff Olson is in the house here. Jeff Olson is in the house. I saw him somewhere. Where's Jeff Olson? There he is. A good friend of mine, a fellow smack, Jeff Olson, Evil Badger. He can tell you a little bit about Graham Mertz, the former quarterback of the Wisconsin Badgers. He can tell you how the Gophers, for the first time since 1993 and 94, won the Axe 2 years in a row. Jeff Olson can tell you that everybody in the Big Ten had Graham Mertz figured out, that Wisconsin only let him process one half of the field on each and every play. So where his eyes went, where he was looking, that's it. The other side of the field, you could take the play off. Graham Mertz, physically able, good talent, but could not process the field at Wisconsin, which, by the way, did not run the most difficult offense under Paul Kurtz. So he transfers out to Florida, and today the Florida Gators named Graham Mertz as their starting quarterback because, well, first of all, the quarterback room is incredibly thin. Bill Napier is in a lot of trouble down there in Gainesville. So we at Peek Around the Corner, we're going to make it official. Even though it's not a week 0 game, it's a week 1 game. We're going to jump on it. We're going to jump on it right now. I don't even care what Cameron Rising's... I don't care what his knee looks like right now. We're taking the Utah Utes. We're giving 7.5 points to Florida. So I just want to make that official. That's our 4th play of the year. Week 0 if you missed it. Week 0 if you missed it. Peek Around the Corner. We have Louisiana Tech minus 10. Hank Bachmeier transfer Boise State. Louisiana Tech with the great Smoke Harris, wide receiver. Louisiana Tech is going to roll. We've got the under 42.5. Mass in New Mexico State. And we got the Fighting Irish in Dublin, Ireland. 20 minus 20.5. They're going to blow the Navy midshipmen out of the water. Notre Dame, Louisiana Tech, and under on the New Mexico State UMass game. And we're making it official right now tonight. With the breaking news that Graham Mertz is officially named the starting quarterback for Florida, we're taking Utah minus 7.5 points. And in the chat room, I don't normally talk about the NFL. In fact, I don't talk about the NFL. 99.99% of the show talks about college football. 0.00001% talk about what's flying in our airspace in which we have no idea what they are. However, tonight, I need the people in the chat, especially the Michigan State Spartans and the Michigan Wolverines in the chat room, who are Detroit Lions fans. I need you to listen to this show, but also be watching your TV set. Watch the Detroit Lions versus the New York Giants preseason game. Because tonight is the night that Mohamed Ibrahim, the legendary, and I don't say that lightly, the legendary Gopher running back Mohamed Ibrahim gets to be introduced to the NFL. He's going to get the ball a lot here in the first preseason game for the Detroit Lions. So buckle up. Give me updates. I don't get that game. We get the Packers game on the NFL Network. I want to see the Lions game. The Lions play at midnight, around midnight, NFL Network here in Minnesota. They're going to replay it. I need Detroit Lions fans, NFL fans, to give me an update, constant updates of Heisman Mohamed Ibrahim, and how he's doing tonight with the Detroit Lions. I expect big things. I'm excited for Ibrahim. Okay, so that takes care of all that. I need to say hi to everybody who's come in here early for Friday evening. Mason Rudolph, Nathan Campbell, Randy Taylor, Tim Bells, Nick Flynn, the fake Tom Osborne, Mr. Bruin. Happy Friday, PATC community. A-Mac is in the house. Cameron B with the Rock Chalk. Lee, good evening, everyone. Hagen says, good evening, folks. Diet Coke time. It's zero sugar. Zero sugar time. Coca-Cola. Ryan Brooks, hello from Florida. SEC country. Okay, Kirk Bender, the craziness out west continues. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into it. Bruce Harris, Boomer. Good evening, Greg, from Buckshot Kid. Good evening, Buckshot Kid. Thanks for coming on in. Starry's in the house. Coy's in the house. West Virginia guy, he's in the house. Neil Brown, I'm nervous about our team this year. Just don't let Penn State beat you twice. I think Penn State's going to roll over the Mountaineers in the first game. Just don't let them beat you twice. The Mountaineers lost a tough game last year to open the season against the Pittsburgh Panthers. The ball goes through the wide receiver's hands. Pittsburgh picks it off, runs it back, pick six at the end of the game. It was tough, and it almost seemed like that game cost West Virginia more games down the road. Don't let Penn State beat you twice. Neil Brown and West Virginia Mountaineers. Sean, hello. I appreciate you coming on in. Todd Townhawk, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate it. Richard, thank you, sir, for coming on in. John Coy, Mr. Monkey says he's in the house. J-Rod's in the house. Jeff Olson, Mertz. We already talked about that. Greg the Cooler, no more. Let's go. 5.5 for the win total for Florida. Are you taking the under? I'll take a look at that, Jason. I will take a look at that. Laura Weiss is in the house. Mrs. Texas Tech Red Raider, she's in the house. Steve is in. Mr. Bearcat is in the house. I get the Lions here in Northwest Ohio, Toledo Fox Station. Well, if you can give me an update. Interception on the first play for the Lions. Uh-oh. Well, give the ball to Mo. Rick Olson, Oregon, Minnesota. Can't wait. Greg, tell me the small chances are for Cal and Stanford to sneak in the Big Ten. Not happening this go-around. Not happening. Okay, let's get to the story here. Thanks for all coming in. I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, if you like our content during the show, please subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. It helps with the algorithms of YouTube so very much. And if you want to make sure your comment gets read throughout the show, you can hit the $ small donation to help us keep the lights on here at Peek Around the Corner. We're going to get to your phone calls later in the show. The number is on the ticker down below. Let's get right to it. First of all, before we get to what the Oregon State president said this evening, this just popped about an hour ago, I want to talk. Now, this morning, I did an episode talking about Stanford's options. Could they go independent football? Could they put their Olympic sports into the Mountain West? The options for Oregon State, Washington State. We're going to get an update here by SI, by Pac-4 Day. We're going to talk about what he says, and then we're going to go through the Oregon State's president. He sent out a letter, an email, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. Put down your comments. We'll get to them. We'll get to your phone calls. Let's get to it. Here is an article, just sources at SI. Stanford and Cal's futures unclear, with ACC's candidacy unlikely to pass. The Bay Area schools, along with Oregon State, Washington State, are evaluating other options as the Pac-12 continues to crumble. There's nothing new there, okay? Again, Pac-4 Day, Richard Johnson. Stanford and California's candidacy for admission to the Atlantic Coast Conference has stalled 1 vote short. Now, I'll get in. I think it's probably more than 1 vote short. You know what? I'm going to get into it right now. I think they're more than 1 vote short. It's one of those things where if you're a school that really doesn't want this to pass, and you know there's already 4 votes to stop it, it doesn't cost you anything to say, yes, I'm for expansion of California and Stanford. It's not costing Miami, Florida, Virginia Tech, Virginia, anything to say, okay, Phillips, commissioner, and the other schools in the conference. So I said it this morning. I said it yesterday. I wouldn't focus too much on who's voting yes, who's voting no for expansion, with a couple exceptions. Like the Notre Dame exception. That's the story. How much they are pushing for Stanford and California to be included into the ACC. That's a story. I think there's other schools out there, like a Pittsburgh, like a Louisville, them being for expansion. I think that's the story. But for the most part, I believe, peek around the corner, we believe that there is more than 4 votes that is stopping from this happening. We'll get back to the article here. I just wanted to give you what our perception is from what we have heard. Okay. While league members have stopped short of declaring that the Bay Area schools' addition to the league is off the table, it doesn't appear likely that the results will change. I think that's correct. And I think that's been correct since this whole thing started. I don't believe they were ever going to get the votes. The 2 members of the disagreeing Pac-12 need 12 of the 15 members of the ACC to support their move. 4 schools stood opposed when the issue was discussed Wednesday night, sources say. Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina State. Now, sometimes in some reports, Virginia's been thrown in there as a school, also saying no. Again, I really don't think it matters all that much. There's going to be 4 notes to stop this expansion. Hell or high water. Lacking the requisite numbers, sources say it's unlikely that the potential expansion of the league will be put to a formal vote. So they're just not going to vote on it because they don't want the optics of them voting it down. So they're just not going to go to it. Sources describe ACC members, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, and Louisville as among the most vocal in advocating for the Cardinal and the Golden Bears to join the league. And I believe that. I believe that most heartily. I believe that to be true. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips has been leading the discussion, presenting financial and scheduling scenario to the league members. In explaining his advocacy for Cal and Stanford this week, Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick told ESPN the notion that two of the very best academic institutions in the world who also play Division I sports could be abandoned in this latest chapter of realignment is an indictment of college athletics. We've been over that before. The selling points for Stanford and Cal's admission to the league: elite academics, broad-based sports excellence, both of which fit the general ACC profile. The drawbacks: distance, the lack of football impact in recent years, and thus the lack of an appreciable addition to the league's per-school revenue. Barring a change of heart that would give California Stanford the 75% threshold, the two schools and fellow Pac-12 members, Oregon State and Washington State, are evaluating other options. The American Athletic Conference, AAC, and the Mountain West both would be interested in adding the four schools or some combination of them. The Mountain West offers geographic continuity, while the ACC has a richer media rights distribution, although that AAC deal goes all the way, goes more than a decade. So it's richer in the short term. Is it going to be more richer in the long term than the Mountain West Conference? Or, and here is the money shot of this article, and this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And then we're going to end the article here. We're going to go to what Oregon State president said. Or the Pac-12 could attempt to recruit at least 4 new members, getting back to the minimum of 8 schools required for FBS certification. Under the NCAA rules, there is a 2-year grace period to remain viable a conference that dips below 8 members. But my goodness, try to get a media deal, 4-member conference. Under the rules, under the grace period, they could be a conference with 4 members, but in reality, I don't believe they can be. Back to the article. We're going to end it right here. Going independent in football while finding a home for other sports could also be an avenue, though perhaps only for Stanford. Both those options are rife with complications and hurdles. The Pac-12 could attempt to recruit at least 4 new members. And what we call that here at Peek Around the Corner, what we call that here is poaching. The Pac-4, Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, California, with all the issues they have, they owe Comcast millions of dollars, $50 million. They have the Holiday Bowl thing going on, a dispute with the Holiday Bowl. They got the Pac-12 network sitting there with cobwebs. And it looks like they may be gearing up to try to go poaching, to try to get 4 schools or go for a merger with the Mountain West. But it's got to be on their dime. It's got to be, well, let's take a look at Oregon State's president, what the president just said this evening. So buckle up. Here we go. I know a lot of you haven't seen this yet. President Murthy. Dear Oregon State community members, since I last updated you immediately following the sudden events that destabilized the Pac-12 conference 1 week ago, we are making progress in defining Oregon State University's best paths forward. We continue to believe that preserving the Pac-12 is in the best interest of the Oregon State student athletes and the remaining universities. And so we are doing everything in our control to stabilize and rebuild the conference. We have a lot more to go through in this letter. But let's Let's just take this part first. Now, I'm just speculating here. I'm just taking a guess. I want you guys to speculate in the comments section or with your phone call later in the show. But for the Oregon State president to say this, number one, to start out, we're just starting here. We got a lot more paragraphs to go, so buckle up. For the Oregon State president to put this down on paper, digitally, sending it out to his Oregon State community, knowing that it's going to go out public, a couple things come to mind. First of all, you would think that the Oregon State president believes that Stanford and California are not going to get that ACC invite. Number two, I believe the Oregon State president, they have been having talks, was reported. We talked about that in our morning episode 291 here at PATC. They've been having talks, and most of those talks have not included George Kliavkoff, the commissioner. Okay? He hasn't been invited. But it seems to me those four schools are united in unison. Look, let's rebuild this conference. AAC doesn't quite fit with us. Mountain West, academically, doesn't quite fit with us. A lot of issues, both sides, independent, that's going to be very difficult. Let's try to rebuild the Pac-12. So for Oregon State president to come out and say this, I think those first two things pretty much have to be true. The belief from Oregon State that California, Stanford don't have a pathway to the ACC, that has been pretty obvious. And number two, they are united, or they believe they are united. And then they have an interest together. They're going to go for it. They're going to try to rebuild the Pac-12. We continue to believe that preserving the Pac-12 is in the best interest of Oregon State student athletes, preserving the Pac-12. So either the Pac-12, ladies and gentlemen, on Friday, August 11th, either the Pac-4 is going to go poaching. Poaching from the Mountain West, poaching from the AAC. They're either going to go poaching or they're going to do a merger, but they're calling the shots. They're preserving the Pac-12. It's going to be the name Pac-12 or Pac-10 or Pac-16. They're going to call the shots. Stanford and California are going to call the shots. Oregon State, Washington State now are going to be the third, fourth most important members of that conference. They're going to call the shots. They're going to somehow get a media deal. They're going to somehow get a new commissioner. If they merge with the Mountain West, Gloria Nevarez will be the commissioner, probably, but it's going to be the Pac-12. Preserving the Pac-12 is in their best interest. Holy smokes. Let's get back to the letter, shall we? As a trusted broker and convener, Oregon State is playing an important role in navigating both the future of the Pac-12 and realignment among universities across the Western United States more broadly. Rex M in the chat room. New PAC media deal in 2 weeks. Okay, you guys are killing me. Okay, this paragraph here. Now listen. As a trusted broker, Oregon State is playing an important role in navigating both the future of the Pac-12 and realignment among universities across the Western United States more broadly. We are ready for this challenge. We are prepared for multiple possible scenarios and continue to pursue every opportunity for Oregon State student athletes and university. It doesn't sound like Oregon State and Washington State are ready to say, thank you, Mountain West, may I have another. Thank you, AAC, please let us in the door. No. This is, our four schools, We're calling the shots. We are calling the shots. The Western United States. We are playing an important role in navigating among the universities across the Western United States more broadly. Merger, poaching, or is this going to be a Frankenstein conference? Taking some from the AAC, some from the Mountain West? How do you as a Mountain West school, how do you as one, let's say Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, California, they go to San Diego State and they say, okay, San Diego State, you're in. Colorado State, we want you to be in. Take two more schools from the Mountain West. Boise State, you're in. Utah State, you're in. Then those four schools have to pay a $34 million exit fee to play with the four schools starting next year. Or forget that. Forget that scenario. Oregon State, Washington State, California, Stanford, they go to AAC. They have a little bit of a smaller exit fee. Reported somewhere around 10 to 17 million, probably a little bit more. Not as much as 30 million, probably. It'd be negotiated down, what have you. What are you looking at there? Rice, Tulane? What are the other two schools that you're going to poach? Is it a poaching or is it a Frankenstein? We're going to be taking some from the Mountain West, some from the AAC, or is it going to be a merger? But you're the four schools that are calling the shots. Back to this letter that the Oregon State president sent about an hour before we came on live. All this week, athletic director Scott Barnes and I have been meeting with Oregon State student athletes, staff, faculty, alumni, and state and local government representatives to hear directly from them about how Friday's events, August 4th, potentially impact students, our community, Oregon State, and our state. I've heard feelings of frustration, anger, and dismay, and I have heard your readiness to work together and to fight. This week and next, we are rallying our supporters. This week, now it's Friday here, but this week, next week, we are rallying our supporters. We are speaking out and lifting up the voices of student athletes, alumni, fans, and communities we serve. Their stories need to be part of the conversation about what is happening with conference realignment. We also call on all Beavers and supporters to show up for Oregon State student athletes in Reserve Stadium and across all of our athletic venues, continuing the momentum of last year's success, which saw 12 Oregon State teams advance to the postseason. The nation's eyes are upon us like never before, and we need all Beaver Nation to rally with us. I'll repeat that. The nation's eyes are upon us like never before, and we need all of Beaver Nation to rally with us. On and off the field, our fight continues as we work diligently to forge Oregon State athletics path forward. I will continue to provide updates. Thank you for your continued support of Oregon State student athletes, coaches, athletic staff, and university. Before we get to your comments, I want to read that first paragraph. Since I last updated you immediately following the student sudden events that destabilized the Pac-12, we are making progress to define an Oregon State University best path forward. We continue to believe that preserving the Pac-12 is the best interest of our student athletes and the remaining universities, and we are doing everything in our control to stabilize, and here is the money shot of this letter, to destabilize and rebuild the conference. So I ask you, PATC community, Oregon State president comes out and talks tonight and says we are ready to rebuild this conference. How do they rebuild it? By a merger? There's a lot of difficulties. All these articles have been talking about how difficult it would be for the Mountain West schools to merge with the 4 Pac-12 schools. How difficult it would be for the AAC to merge with the 4 Pac. So are they going poaching? If they are going poaching, who are they going to poach? What 4 schools are they going to poach? And what kind of media contract are they going to get? It doesn't look like this is going to be over soon, like I thought it was. It looks like they're going to be pushing the envelope. It looks like they're going to try to preserve the Pac-12. The Pac-4 schools are going to try to preserve the conference. Let's get to your comments. Let's get to your phone calls. You can talk about anything, college football. You can disagree with me on our pick of Utah minus 7.5 over Florida. You can disagree with anything that I'm saying in comments and phone calls. Let's get to it. Make Greg Pflugar the Pac-12 commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. But I am not qualified at all. Coke Zero, real Coke taste, 0 calories. Enjoy everything. Obi says, how about pack a lunch? Nobody's together when the known schools in the Pac-12 says deuces. Jamie Thornton says, I think they will poach. It sounds like a poaching. Doesn't it? It sounds like they're thinking of poaching. It sounds like a whole lot of cloak and dagger. Who would they poach? Who would be accessible? Who would go for this? The attraction of a school in the same athletic conference of California and Stanford. These AAC schools and these Mountain West schools, there's a lot of attraction there. There is. The low valuation that California and Stanford receive from the Big Ten and the AAC, the media partners of the Big Ten and the ACC, that's not a problem when it comes to the Mountain West and the AAC. They're not looking at California and Stanford's low valuation when it comes to athletics. Their valuation is in line with those two conferences, but probably even a little bit more. So there is great interest to corral Stanford and California. They have options. We've been talking about this. Oregon State and Washington State, they have options. It looks like they're taking the option that has a lot of risk to it. Has a lot of risk to it. And who are they going to be able to poach? Provo Cougar fan, poaching UCF Davis and Cal State Sacramento are about it. Thank you for your super chat, Provo Cougar fan. I'm wondering, would a Tulane be interested? If they were interested, those 4 Pac-4 schools would take them. But would they be interested? Would Rice be interested? I don't know, man. These are tough decisions. Because the problem is, Tulane's going to go, okay, we make such and such money here in the AAC. We have an exit fee. What are we going to make in the Pac-4? So now, California, Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State, they're going to have to go to some media companies and say, what type of valuation do we get with us 4 schools and a Tulane and a Rice and a North Texas and a whatever? It's SMU, Memphis, Rice, Tulane. What type of valuation would we get on that? And they have to do this without really an acting commissioner, because they're not even including George Kliavkoff in these meetings. Oh, man, it is... Greg, you've missed my super chats. Look, the problem with the super chat early in the show is I do a monologue, I'm reading an article, and I'm not looking for super chat. So I'm sorry, John. Super chats early are very difficult for me to get to. I do appreciate your generosity. 4 Texas AAC team with Tulane and Memphis plus 4 PAC with SDSU Fresno makes 12. If 14, add Boise and Tulsa maybe. Just call it the PAC. 4 Texas AAC team with Tulane and Memphis. Fresno State, again, Fresno State and San Diego State would have to spend $34 million to get out of the Mountain West Conference exit fee if they want to play next year in the PAC. But John Teal says that. Thank you, John. Appreciate Super Chat. Yeah, I'm going to have to find a better way to find these Super Chats early in the show during my monologue. I guess I'm going to have to keep my phone on while I'm doing the monologue just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So I do apologize. Nicole Auerbach is also reporting The Athletic is confirming. The Athletic is confirming that Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and North Carolina State are the 4 schools that are saying no to the expansion. One of them has to flip for there to be California and Stanford to become ACC members. Again, I'm not sure if there's not more than 4 schools because, again, if you're one of the other schools and you know there's 4 votes going against it, it doesn't cost you anything to be for expansion. But we'll see. Are they going to be able to get one of those schools to flip? I don't know how you do that. I do not know how you do that. North Carolina State is close to the hip of North Carolina. And again, I'm not buying that I'm not buying Virginia Tech is for expansion. I get Pittsburgh. I get Louisville. I get the other schools. I'm not buying that Miami of Florida is for expansion, even though their president does have affinity for those California schools. I don't think they're going to get the votes, but we shall see. We shall see. Robert Perez keeps talking about Fresno State going to the Big 12. Perez, I hope you get your wish. I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe Fresno State to the Pac-12 in the rebuilt Pac-12. Yeah, I will try to keep my head on a swivel. I will do a better job with those donations. I do appreciate it. Noah Bunga says Ross Dellinger had the idea of conference with Stanford and California in 3 service academies and Notre Dame. It would be great television, but I don't see the Irish going to do it. No, the Notre Dame's not going to do that. Not going to do that. Sky says Washington said it would cost $10 million a year to travel in the Big Ten. Even if travel for the AAC schools in the PAC is half that, the extra money is eaten up fast. Jamie Thornton says they should get the AAC, Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the new PAC. He's been very good for the AAC, rebuilt strong after being poached. Larry Scott is available. Greg, I'm not sure if there's 9 schools would vote to dissolve the Mountain West Conference. That's a very good point, B. It takes 9 votes out of the 12 schools to dissolve the conference So those Mountain West schools are free to join the Pac-12 without paying the $34 million. They're not going to get 9 votes. Unless you're going to say to 9 schools, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you guys join us, Pac-4. You dissolve the conference, you join us. I'm hesitant to believe the G5 teams are lining up to join the Pac. There's got to be some attraction there. There has to be some attraction there. You know, to be with Colorado, to rub elbows. Those presidents want to rub elbows with California and Stanford. They do. But man, I mean, to get out of their conference, to join those 4 schools is going to cost a lot of money that these schools do not have. The rebuilding of the Pac-12. Oregon State's president, if you're just joining us, we just went through the email saying that they are determined to preserve the Pac-12, rebuild it. And Oregon State, along with the other 3 schools, are taking what I would paraphrase as command of the situation. They are ready to rebuild the Pac-4. Bearcat Steve earlier said Ibrahim has yet to touch the ball tonight for the Detroit Lions. Come on, Lions. Give Mo the ball. Give Mo the ball. Mark Ruckert. Could Florida State flip if they can get Cal and Stanford to agree to dissolve the ACC so eventually end up in the Big Ten? I don't think Cal and Stanford would do that because let's say you could dissolve the ACC. Then what is Cal and Stanford? Where are they going to end up in a dissolved ACC? I just don't think I don't think Cal and Stanford would do that. But thank you so much, Mark, for the super chat. I appreciate once again your generosity to the show. I don't think so. I don't think Cal and Stanford would do that. Again, Florida State, August 15th. They have until August 15th to send in the withdrawal notice if they want to play in a new conference by July 1st, 2024. We'll see what happens with Florida State. They sure did talk a lot. They sure did. The last Board of Trustees meeting they had, the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Peter Collins, said, "You're going to hear from us real soon." Well, it's been over a week. We haven't heard anything. Are we going to hear anything from Florida State by August 15th? If they don't pull the trigger, then what was all this talking? What was this all about? To gain leverage within the conference? Was this a master bluff by Florida State? And if it was, what did you gain out of this brinkmanship? What did you get? What did you earn? What did you get from the ACC? Either way, no matter if Florida State withdraws before or on August 15th, or if they don't, Peter Collins and the Board of Trustees and the president himself, they're going to have to get up in front of a mic and they're going to have to answer questions. What did you get out of all this if you don't pull the trigger? And if you do pull the trigger, there's going to be an avalanche of questions. Either way, all eyes will be on Florida State's leadership. The president, the Board of Trustees, when it comes to Tuesday, August 15th, because it's on or before August 15th. Could be late in the evening that Florida State slips the withdrawal notice and sends it out to the 14 other ACC presidents and the commissioner. Stanford could afford everyone's exit fees if they wanted. I don't think they want to. I do not think they want to. Stanford has the money to pay the exit fees for any team they want to join the Pac-4. Look, Stanford has $36 billion in endowment. And some people say they have $1 billion in endowment for athletics. But you know what? They don't. It's not like they just go spend their money. The reason why they have $36 billion in endowments is because they have very successful alumni in giving money to the university, and they do not want to see the university. I mean, why Stanford, if that's the case, if they're so rich that they can do anything they want with their money, why are they even worried about being in a conference? Why are they even worried about having a media contract? The reason is because a lot of that endowment money is tied up. It's bounded up for certain situations that they can use it on. It's not, they can't use the money to be paying other universities exit fees. Because the people who donate the money to Stanford, that will dry up if you start spending the money that way. So it's not as easy as you're an incredibly wealthy university, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't quite, in the real world, it doesn't work that way. Do you think the Big Ten will add another media partner? I think they'll take a look, Eric. Now, Fox has paid for the freight of Oregon and Washington for now. I do think there's a chance they're going to bring on another media partner, be it to Amazon or ESPN, to take the late night window or a Friday night window. Amazon or ESPN would be the chalk when it comes to a potential new media partner for the Big Ten, or they might not do it. Fox has paid for it now. It doesn't mean that there won't be a new media partner. We're going to be following that pretty closely here at Peek Around the Corner. We do have some suspicions. John, thank you for once again for your super chat, for your generosity. Thank you, my friend. 9 Mountain West teams, minus Hawaii, New Mexico, and Wyoming. Ooh, our Wyoming guy, PATC Wyoming guy, is not going to like this. 9 Mountain West teams, minus Hawaii, New Mexico, and Wyoming, plus Pac-4 equals 13. Then swing by the AAC for Tulane, SMU, and Rice, makes 16. So John has come up with his Frankenstein conference. He's got his 9 schools that would dissolve the Mountain West. None of those schools would owe an exit fee. And then you swing by the AAC and Tulane, SMU, and Rice, they would all have an exit fee. Very interesting. Very interesting. John, you are either on something or you are on something. Either way, a brilliant comment. Thank you, John, for your contributions. And once again, for your donations. I appreciate it. Noel Ramirez, Florida State isn't going anywhere. Cypher, thanks. Thank you so much for your super chat. I appreciate the generosity to the channel. The Big Ten could always buy the Pac history since the best have joined, especially if Stanford and California join, especially for marketing the West Wing. The Big Ten could always buy the Pac. Are you talking about like their tapes and the history, what they have behind the curtain? The media rights, like each conference, they own these third-tier media rights, these videos. Are you talking about that, Cypher? Yes, they could. I do think the question of Stanford and California joining the Big Ten, we've talked about this for a couple weeks. It is cold. It is cold between the Big Ten and California and Stanford. The Big Ten presidents would love Stanford and California. But Fox Sports is not on board. As of this moment, and they haven't been, the valuation comes in very low for Stanford and California. Very, very low when it comes to the Big Ten. Especially when you consider the Big Ten already has USC and UCLA, California schools, they believe, the Big Fox doesn't believe. that the Big Ten Network could sell in Northern California. Now the ACC, Jim Phillips, he's selling the idea that the ACC network would sell in Northern California, that the network would expand and the ACC schools would all get a bump in pay because of the high population area of Northern California, San Francisco, Sao Paulo, all that whole area. However, there are other people who believe that demographics in Northern California not really interested. Not interested in buying the ACC network. Okay. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. Rumor has it, Kliakoff will be out. Navarez will be the new commish. Stanford needs to part ways with California. Do people realize, John Famlor, do people realize that Stanford and Notre Dame might not be scheduled past 2024 to play in football? Good point, John. Good point. Good point. Renee sources SMU to buy the Pac-4. John says, Greg, look at the homepage for the Stanford Daily, the student newspaper. They're talking robo-taxes and nothing about the Pac-12. They had an article on women's soccer. Yeah, they're... Craig Welch, excited for Florida State to send a withdrawal letter and then say later they were only intending to withdraw. Oh, you guys are killing me. I think it's happening. I think they will poach Jamie Thornton. Okay, let's open up the phone lines. Seven 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Let me know what you're thinking. Pac-4, they're going poaching. It looks like they're going to go poaching. Who are they going to try to get?
Call from
Lewis.
Lewis is on the line. What are you thinking here? Oregon State president being pretty strong tonight. They want to preserve the Pac-4. They want to preserve the name, preserve the conference, rebuild it. How will they go about it, Lewis?
Amen. That's a prayer and amen. There's no path to do it because of the money that it would take to add Mountain West or even American schools. The American's not going to let somebody out in less than a year without a pound of flesh. If you gave him 2 years, that's just historically. West Virginia paid a fortune to leave after a year. If you leave in 2 years, you have some more leeway to negotiate a better fee on the 27 months. And the Mountain West is $34 million. So that's a prayer. But I never thought I would say it. West Virginia and Stanford now look like they will have something in common. They both come just short of joining the ACC. Yeah. West Virginia, actually several times, dating all the way back to 1950 with Legs Holly. West Virginia was denied admission to the ACC back then, and it's continued for decades. Now we're to a point where West Virginia doesn't even want to be in the ACC because everyone sees the writing on the wall. But this is a really bad move for the survival of the ACC to reject Cal and Stanford. I know Duke was all in favor of it. Duke has a huge alumni base in the Bay Area. This is a match made in heaven for Duke. And if you want to keep the conference stable, you add those schools because in a few years, who's to say the ACC, even if they lose Florida State clubs, it can't pick up the Four Corners schools who would want to reassociate with Stanford and Cal and could make a run at the Big 12. But that's not going to happen when you don't add Stanford and Cal now. But that's also who's against this, the schools that want to leave. And NC State is staying with Carolina in the hopes that if Carolina goes to a Power 2 conference, State will find a home in a Power 2 conference as well, or the legislature in North Carolina will block it. So I think the 4 votes, it's done. It's a bad move for the ACC. It telegraphs that the ACC is really in trouble in a few years. I don't know if it'll be next year, but at some point, it's inevitable those schools are going to leave, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina. And the Big 12 will eventually be there to eat third, if you will, after the Big 10 and the SEC. But had the ACC succeeded in adding Stanford and Cal, I think the script in a few years would be a little more uncertain. So this was a really bad move for the ACC. But it's been a strange time. I don't know what move. The move they have to go to the Mountain West. They don't. That's not, and try to do whatever they can to recover whatever resources are still left in the Pac-12. But that's where the 4 schools have to go. Maybe Stanford can go independent.
I agree.
Do that.
I agree. Yep.
But that's what's going to happen because it costs too much to do it any other way. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but at some point they'll swallow the pill. And so that's where I see it going. But those are my 2 thoughts, Mountain West or the American potentially. I wouldn't rule out the American only because of ESPN, and it pays more money, and ESPN might kick in some money to add those Western schools to the American. So I wouldn't rule them out. It's going to be one of those 2 conferences for at least 3 of the 4. And so that's the first thing I will say. The second thing, this was a bad decision by the ACC. Remember, the Pac-12 did not add schools in 2021. That was a mistake. This is a mistake for the ACC survival as well. And the final thing, we had the Canzano report. The first thing he said in the year that I wholly agree with, he said that ESPN had offered $30 million. Now, we all knew this, but he now is reporting. He's a year late with reporting it, but he's admitting it.
Yeah.
And the Pac-12 turned that down, and they're dead. The Big East turned down $11 million in 2010, which at the time would have been a pretty good sum. They turned that down in 2010, and 2 years later, that conference is dead. You don't turn down those offers. It's a shame that the Pac-12 did not do it. Now they apparently are looking to engage Oliver Luck. But in the Pac-12, that's like bringing in a great firefighter after the house is already burned down.
Yes.
A little bit late to bring in Ollie Luck. He's a great guy and could potentially do something, but they have to – eventually they'll see the writing on the wall. They might try a few tricks up their sleeve, but eventually they'll be in one of those other 2 conferences, and Stanford might go independent. So that's where it is. Great show. Look forward to hearing what some of the other callers have to say. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Louis. It seems like Oliver Luck gets hired to a new position every 3 to 6 months. As a consultant here, as a consultant there. Smart guy, successful guy. 12 Ducks 72. Greg, any truth to the rumor that the Pac-4 are going to sue Fox, Oregon, Washington, and USC? I've not heard that. I've not heard that at all. No one has told me anything about that. Don't know why they'd be suing. No, I have not heard that. Again, the phone lines are open. 763-260-1333.
Call from
Stephen.
Stephen, the floor is yours. How you doing?
Pretty good. I want to talk the Pac-4 and the American. I think it's their best option.
Okay.
I think that conference is positioned really well. Just one domino. If those teams joined, everything I think is going to start to kind of fall their way. I think most of the teams in the ACC would rather be in the SEC, the Big 10, or the Big 12. So I think they could lose 11 or 12 teams. And then I think you could end up with a Power 4, with the Tier 2 being the Big 12 and the American. But if they added those 4 in the Pac, they're at 18. And then in 2025, it might be worth it for the $17 million exit fee to get San Diego State and Boise. Then they're at 20. They're done. Travel is very comparable to what it would be in the Mountain West at that point. And everything would kind of settle down into a good structure. We wouldn't have to keep doing this. If they somehow went to the Mountain Mountain West, which I think would be a horrible option. It's not branded well, and you're just kind of stuck there, and you're not going to be any better than the American or have the like the demographics or like the setup that they have nationally. Everything's just going to take a lot more years and be messier, and we'll be spending years unraveling everything, playing musical chairs for way too long. But in the American, you know, they've got a lot of good teams. So like the Pac-4 would basically be playing a couple games in California and then some games in Texas. And then if they also added San Diego State, that would be good for SoCal recruiting, and Boise, who's a good team potentially. So you got like the two best recruiting states right there. And that would be 80% of the travel. You would only play like a couple of games outside of your division. And then you would meet, you could basically, you know, have your championship in Dallas, possibly alternate with Las Vegas. But I think basically because once the ACC dissolves, it would go to a P4. That's going to up like the value. They already have the substantial change clause to renegotiate with ESPN, and then ESPN wants some West Coast teams to fill the late window, which is more dollars for the American and exposure for those Pac-4 teams. So I think everything aligns very well, and it's a very strong option. And I think over time, it's going to narrow the gap with the Big 12, and because you're going to have like your tier 1 of the SEC and the Big 10, and your tier 2 would be the Big 12 and the American, and then everything else will be a lot lower. And I think over time, just from a value and a TV ratings perspective, the American is going to compare very favorably overall with like the Big 12 and really drastically narrow the gap over time.
I think some of that is plausible, Steve. I don't think there's any chance that the American, with the additions of California, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State, would be considered an Autonomy 5 school, or Autonomy 4 school. I don't think that's in the cards. I don't even think it's in the cards for the Pac-12 in name. If they would add schools into the Pac-12 to become a Pac-12, like with 8 schools, like the Pac-8, I think they're going to lose their autonomy as well.
Well, if you look at the American has been to 6 of the 7 of the last New Year's 6 bowls. So like for the Mountain West, it was only once in the first year since they've had like the format of the New Year's 6. Tulane, you know, is majorly on the upswing. UTSA, new stadiums at South Florida, a lot of stadium upgrades at Memphis. North Texas has an enrollment of 44,000 now, which is the largest in the state of any school that's not in the SEC, like A&M and UT Austin. So, I mean, I just think it's set up really well for the next 25 years. If you really think what it truly is, you've got that West versus East that I think can kind of maximize the intrigue nationally. You're in all 4 time zones. So that's like another reason I think that they'll start to narrow the gap with like the Big 12. Like the Big 12 does not have that. And they might feel some pressure at that point. Let's get the 4th time zone. And then if they invited like an Oregon State and a San Diego State, for instance, you could still backfill in the American with like a Fresno and a UNLV.
Okay. All right. I think some people agree with you. I think a lot of people agree with you in the sense that the AAC offers more for those 4 Pac-12 schools. So I thank you for the phone call. You bring up a lot of good points. I don't know about 25 years. I think we've had so many changes. I think we're going to get more changes years down the road. But I appreciate the phone call. Excellent phone call. I hope you call again, sir.
Thanks, Greg.
Appreciate
Have a good
it.
day.
Got it. I'm sorry, I did not get the name.
Robert Perez.
Okay, can you wait for just? Can you hold on a second? I just got to do some. Ryan Brooks, Super Chat. I appreciate your donation, your generosity to the show. A huge underreported story is PAC not adding before June 30th or presenting a bad deal earlier so they can rebuild cheaper as a backup. A lot of that has to do with Colorado. Colorado was ready to pull the trigger in the middle of June, but they didn't do it. Something happened. A voice was raised in the Board of Regents meeting. They wanted to slow it down a little bit, give George Klikoff more of an opportunity before the Pac-12 media days, and it didn't happen. But yeah, you're correct. It makes it more difficult for the Pac-4 to backfill. I appreciate that comment, Ryan Brooks. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so very much. I do see in the comments section with Bearcat Steve and somebody else, it looks like Greg the Cooler is still here. Mohamed Ibrahim only got a couple carries. He walked off the field gingerly. Once again, man, oh man, nothing goes my way. Okay, caller, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Greg. This is Robert Perez. I'm calling.
Oh, Robert, nice to see you. Nice to hear from you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Fresno State is on the line.
Yeah. I'm going to do a little homerism here, I guess. But
no
all,
problem.
Before I get all on my little soapbox here, I wanted to wish you a happy anniversary on your show. Love your show. Listen to it all the time. Great content.
Appreciate it, sir.
Yes. So there's rumors. I don't think Fresno's going to go to the Big 12. They're just trying to go, and that's a rumor.
Yep.
And we've been hearing things here that, Brent Yormark and our presidents, they've been talking and trying to get things together. But after everything happened with the PAC, that wasn't going to happen. And so now they're trying to see, but they got to get money from the TV network to pay for that. I mean, they're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was wondering, as far as the exit fees to the Mountain West, one of the thoughts I remember reading was, is if the PAC invite 4 teams from the AAC, which has a lower pay, exit fee, for this coming up year, the 24-25 year, and then 4 more schools from the Mountain West, 25-26, that exit fee from the Mountain West will be significantly lower, and so they can kind of like just elevator it, and beat the system that way. Otherwise, I just don't see how PAC. None of our teams in the Mountain West. I think there's a reluctancy to trust Stanford, especially, and Cal, because they're just been so we've been little sisters of them for forever.
Yeah.
And so there's that lack of trust because, especially now they've been flirting with the ACC and, they're flirting with the Big Ten. They're going to be the next Oregon and Washington. They're going to leave when they first can. And that's all I have to say, Greg.
Yeah.
So,
you made a great comment. I'll make a comment after you get out the line. I appreciate you calling, Robert Perez. I hope you call again, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
Got it, buddy. Fresno State. Fresno State. Mr. Perez, Fresno State. Hold on one second, everybody. Hold on. Mo Ibrahim went into the locker room with the trainer. I tell you, if 2023 is going to be if this is going to be the exact same thing that happened I cannot be Greg the Cooler again with my picks and who I'm cheering for when it comes to players. I shouldn't have said anything. I should not have said a word about Mo Ibrahim tonight. My bad. It is my fault once again. Unbelievable. Okay. God, it's just. And Mountain West Conference just doesn't have the firepower that the AAC does, and it's just a fact. I saw a comment earlier in regards to Jim Williams announcing that the Mountain West is ready for a merger, or they're open to it. Yes, I think that's true. The idea that the Pac-4 could poach 4 AAC schools, like Mr. Perez just commented on, yeah, that's been out there in articles where they could go with like a Memphis, Tulane, SMU, Rice in the AAC for 2024, and then in 2025 pick up 4 Mountain West schools to make it a 12-team conference. Again, that's possible. They're going to have to go poaching. Would SMU do that? Would a Tulane want to do that? Would a Memphis want to do that? Man, that's so risky. That is risky. Because you don't know. I mean, some media partners, somebody would have to put a piece of paper in front of Tulane and say, these are the projections of what you would make in a Tulane, SMU, Rice, Memphis, California, Stanford. I can't believe I'm having Memphis and Stanford in the same conference, but California, Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State. This is how much you would make. Compare that to how much you make in the AAC right now, and then there's going to be a little bit of a difference, but the risk that you take isn't worth it. Man, I tell you, Pac-4 schools.
Call from
Bobby.
Bobby, the floor is yours. What do you got to say?
First of all, congratulations on your anniversary, Greg.
Appreciate
Huge
it.
Congrats.
Appreciate it.
And I was gonna say you're Greg. You're gonna be Greg the Heater, but it sounds like you're having a bad night already, man.
I'm already having a bad night. Jeez,
I'm so sorry. I feel bad for you, man.
God, it's just.
Row the boat, Greg.
Wait, I
Row
just
the
want
boat.
to say something. Wait, I want to make something perfectly clear. Because most of the people, 99% of the people in the chat, are not Gopher fans. You know, this is a national college football show. Mo Ibrahim has been the most fantastic Gopher player for so many years. This is his first shot in the NFL. He's going to get the ball. It's the first preseason game. I'm giving him his props. I'm cheering him on. I'm all excited. I ask you all to put your head on a swivel, give me an update, and bam, out of the chute. He's out of the game injury. I tell you something. I've got to get rid of this Greg the Cooler moniker. I've got to get rid of it, but it isn't happening tonight. Bobby, go ahead. The floor is yours. Thanks for letting me interrupt you.
For Minnesota players, I'm hoping is it Terrell Smith, who's playing for the Bears now as cornerback. I think he's challenging for a starting role there, and he was picked in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah.
You're gonna have some golden Gophers where they're gonna do very well. But I am sorry, Ibrahim is a great runner. Great runner.
Yeah.
He carried you guys at times the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With the Pac, they need an evil genius if they're going to pull this off.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's not a matter whether the schools want to do this. Is that they need to go find. I mean, would you trust their commissioner, as it currently stands, to pull something like this off?
No.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You need to go find. You need to find your Yarmark. You need to find a guy who can look at what you have, see what niches are out there to be taken, like you said, to do this, you're going to take some risks, and you got to get other people willing to get on board to take some risks. And I don't know that it's impossible. I don't think it's impossible, but you need an evil genius leading your foursome to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they don't have an evil genius. And
No.
the number 2 person, I can't remember the guy's name, but the number 2 in charge of the Pac-12, when the negotiations first started, you remember he left. He left. I can't remember the guy's
right.
name. What?
I forgot.
Yeah, but he left.
He saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
No, that's why I do think what you just said a little bit ago about those schools. I think there's something that could be done. I think there's a path. There is a path there. I mean, you can see a path, but you need, like I say, you really need an evil genius to kind of pull that off and make call it an academic West niche or something, and you might be able to pull, and especially, you and Immaculate have been talking about, what's coming up here with the end of the season tournament and how much money is going to be involved, and it's way bigger than anybody thinks it's going to be. I have to give you props also. If people really want to know about college realignment, go listen to what the Immaculate's phone call last Saturday. That 10 or 15 minutes. It was a 2-hour show, and it was after the 2-hour mark. It was like the 2:10 mark. But that phone call, Greg, you summed up the last 3 years in that one phone call between Immaculate and yourself. It's probably. I just remember listening to that, thinking that one phone call between what Immaculate said and what you said back to him was bigger than you breaking USC and UCLA. If you really listen to what was said, you're summing up why Texas and Oklahoma did what they did and what USC and UCLA did. You summed up everything in one phone call conversation with Immaculate last Saturday. I guess I had one question for you, Greg, and that's this. And you get steam, and I know FSU hasn't pulled the trigger yet. Why aren't we hearing more about other schools? I mean, knowing what the situation, we've heard about Clemson a little bit, but like Miami, why haven't we heard more about them jumping on board and being willing to pull the trigger, knowing if they all have the same data that FSU had? Why wouldn't Miami jump in on this? I guess is my question.
My answer would be, and I have been told this, and I touched on it a little bit. It's, Clemson wants out. Miami of Florida wants out. North Carolina wants out, okay? But the difference is, it's the personalities in the room. I have been told, now, you wouldn't think of it this way, or at least a person from Minnesota, a fat guy from Minnesota, wouldn't think of the difference. There'd be this great difference between the Clemson Board of Trustees and the Florida State Board of Trustees. I've been told there is a world of difference. Even though Clemson wants out, they're handling this totally different. The way they do their board meetings is totally different. They're all buttoned up. They're all professional. The Florida State Board of Regents, it is a little bit different. And that's why these reporters, while saying on one hand, boy, this is risky, they have no place to go, they would entangle in the courts for a long time, it's going to cost them a lot of money. They're saying that on one hand, but on the other hand, they're saying, but watch for it, it could happen, because of the personalities in the room at Florida State.
Oh, it's going to take a lot of intestinal fortitude. I mean, you got to have guts.
And you might have to be a little crazy. I think that's what they were alluding to.
Well, that was my main question, because, I don't know. I didn't know if maybe also in the background, if they weren't getting different messages, from the third parties in the background saying we prefer these two rather than that one. But because I wondered if that couldn't have some influence on this as well. Although I would say you kind of hinted at the Pete Thamel article where he said they have no place to go. And I remember when I saw that or heard that, I almost took it. That's from ESPN. That's like a veiled threat.
Yeah.
That if you guys do this, we will tangle you up in the courts. The Big Ten won't touch you unless you're free of this stuff, and you won't be free, and we won't broadcast your games, and you will have no place to go. I mean, maybe I'm reading a lot into what Pete Thamel said, but look at who his parent company is. That could be taken, and not just as a veiled threat at Florida State. It's a shot across the bow potentially at anybody else thinking of doing this. That's the way I kind of, when I heard that and I kind of thought about it, I thought that could be taken as a veiled threat, considering where it's coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead.
No, I was just, you go ahead.
I'm not. I don't think Pete Thamel would say anything that, would carry the weight of a threat or anything. But
I don't think it's coming from him. But if maybe his parent company kind of said, "This is where we see things going and how it would play out," and so we would like you to kind of, just not in a mean way, but drop this in there.
But on the other hand, Paul Feinbaum has been saying, now he's switched. 6 months ago, he was saying Florida State, they're talking too big, they're not all that. Now he's saying Florida State and Clemson would be the perfect fit in the SEC. So they're not all singing from the same songbook.
No, well, and I wonder too, and this is just a suspicion, because Paul Feinbaum's been saying that, but you don't hear it a ton from all the ESPN, or they haven't unleashed the whole media power behind that message. And I wonder, and this is just total musings on my part. There was a gang of 7 at the SEC media days that got kind of caught meeting in private. And if say Florida State would pull the trigger on this, and then it goes to court, and the ACC then could go through discovery, and if they discover at all that the SEC or Disney was in any way connected with that gang of 7 meeting, that's a massive lawsuit waiting to happen. Huge. And I just, like I said, these are just my musings. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. No idea. But, I mean, the rumor was that those 7 were looking at, going to the SEC as a group of some kind. I mean, that's what the rumor was.
Or forming their own conference.
Yeah. But like I say, if there was any connection to them, to anybody officially, one way or the other at Disney or ESPN or the SEC, that's just a massive that's why I wonder if that's one. I mean, Paul Feinbaum's been saying it, but they haven't, as it were, unleashed the media dogs. And because they could put full court press on this in lots of ways. I know those are just my thoughts. Again, congratulations on your year, Greg. You are, Greg, the heater when it comes to college expansion, and there's no doubt about that.
Yep, and I'm Greg the cooler on my picks against the spread, and every time I jump on a player and I'm pushing him. The number one example of that last year was Devin Leary, the quarterback of North Carolina State. I'm saying North Carolina State's going to be the upset win of the ACC. No one's calling it but me. And, of course, he gets injured right out of the gate, and it's my fault. I thank you for the phone call, sir. Appreciate it.
I tell you what, you need a foil who will do the opposite bet you do every single time and see how it comes out at the end of the season.
I did that last week. I did that last year for 1 week.
Did you really?
George Costanza, opposite week. I did 8 games. I did the opposite of what I wanted to do, and I ended up 1-7. So I would have went 7-1. So it didn't work either. Thanks
a lot, Greg.
Appreciate it.
I know.
Great phone call from Bobby. A lot of talk in the chat about Brown versus McCord, Ohio State quarterback battle. I thought it was going to be Kyle McCord the whole time. I didn't think Mr. Brown had a chance, but it Sounds like reports that Brown is neck and neck with McCord. Who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes game 1? Offensive line, there were some question marks. Do they need more mobility behind there? Are they going to go with Brown over McCord? We shall see. We shall see. A lot of people talking about Florida State. David M.
Call from
Dick's Auto Electric.
to accept press.
The floor is yours.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, this is Emiliano Zapata.
Okay. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
How are you, Greg?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good,
Hey,
good.
Greg, I was just gonna ask you the two biggest brands right now available, Stanford and Cal. Why is it that there is not enough being said about them going to the Big 12?
Because I think Your Mark has checked with the media partners, and there's no more money for that. And I also believe that Your Mark thinks that California and Stanford would not stick around in the Big 12. I just don't think it's. I don't think it's the right partnership for either side. I don't think Your Mark even. Yeah, I don't. It's just not happening.
Well,
Yeah.
Greg, I just want to say how I want to compliment you on your show. You're always respectful, cheerful, and always a voice for college football. I'm from Texas, but I'm going to be rooting for your Minnesota Golden Gophers.
What is your team?
The University of Houston
Ooh.
Cougars.
All right, Dana
Yes, sir.
Holgerson. I don't think he's going to be on the hot seat this year.
No, Tillman Fertitta, who's a big
Yeah.
booster for the University of Houston.
Yeah.
That was
His guy.
his guy, and well, it's a coup. I can tell you that we all respect Tillman Fertitta,
Yeah.
and we believe in that. He knows what he's doing,
Yeah.
and Dana, he's we're gonna support our team, win or lose.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna also ask you to maybe appear in some of these other shows like Lock on 12, Big 12. They really do not seem to be supporting the University of Houston enough.
Okay.
University of Houston was part of the Southwest Conference,
Yes, sir.
and we dominated in the Southwest Conference. Given the right resources and support, and we can do great things. And
Yes, sir.
as much as I am proud of Houston, it is we prefer to call it U of H or
Okay.
University of Houston.
Got it.
And so anyway, congratulations on your show, and keep up the good work, and I appreciate you
Appreciate
taking
you,
my
sir.
call, and
Please
you're
call
and like I
again.
said, you're always the nicest person doing this type of show.
I appreciate
Thank you, sir.
it. Thank
And
you.
you have a great evening.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Please call again, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you. What are you guys talking about? What is see, I don't think Dana Holgerson's going to be on the hot seat this year. I don't think they're going to first year in the Big 12. No matter what Houston does, I think he's going to be fine. What are you guys talking about? An article, Immaculate, Dennis Dodd. Is there something new out there? I checked. I didn't see anything new. Is there something I'm missing? Immaculate, if you got time, give us a call. I would appreciate it. Give us a call at 763-260-1333. Poaching, Greg. Poaching. Okay, Immaculate's going to call in. I'm not sure what they're talking about here. I have missed it.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, thanks for calling. Did I miss something? What's going on?
It's pretty new. Dennis Dodd put out something in CBS Sports. He put out an article. And I kind of thought so highly of it that I pinned it on my own Twitter and highlighted it. And that's the only thing I have pinned and highlighted right now. So,
Okay.
let me see. I'll pull this up here real quick for you. It's from 8 hours ago.
Okay.
Dennis Dodd tweet. I can send you if you like. It's kind of long. I don't know if you're gonna really have time to get into it right now. But
Okay.
it goes into just the part that I quoted was early estimates have put the value of the new CFP deal upwards of $2 billion annually.
Oh, yeah.
That would be 2 point. You know
Okay.
that part.
Well, go ahead. Keep talking. I'll get into it. But go ahead.
Okay, that would be 2.7 times more revenue than what is currently produced per season, which is $720 million. It would also be by far the biggest media rights deal in college sports history. That's just a little part that I put in quotes, but there is so much more in this article. It's basically an entire episode article, and you can pull so many points out of this, and
Okay.
it kind of looks to me like this isn't just a Dodge thank you love affair, that this is maybe a little bit more like a CBS Sports trying to get back into with the SEC type of a situation. And there's some other stuff going around that I don't really want to waste all your time on, but it kind of looks like there's been a lot of wheeling and dealing in the background. And for anyone who just wants to kind of learn and catch up on
Okay.
what's going on in the future, I just think that article is a good one.
Okay. I do have a general question around that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've done episodes. This was months ago. I did episodes, live shows on the projection. And we used I think we used the number 2.2 billion. No, I think we rounded it down to 2 billion. I think we've worked with that number. And what it was, the projections was like $2 billion. And 80%, the Power 5 schools would get 80% of that revenue, and the G5 would get 20% of that revenue.
Yeah.
And that's how it was in this last contract. Also in the last contract, when 80% of the playoff revenue went to the Power 5 schools, it was evenly divided among the conferences. This time, supposedly. By the way, I want to thank John for his super chat. The PAC needs to make a blood oath with Brett Yormark. Thank you so much for your super chat, John. I appreciate your generosity to this channel. Thank you so very much. This old contract was they would give the Power 5 conferences the same amount of money. And it would happen to be like $75, $77, $79 million every year. And then that money would get allocated to all the schools in your conference. But a smaller conference, smaller members, there'd be a little bit more for each of those schools.
It would be.
But in this new
which
contract,
is probably why they're all trying to stay the same size.
But in this new contract, it's different. Each school is going to get the same amount of money. Yeah. So I made a big deal out. I had like 3 shows on it. I had live shows on it. I'm throwing up my hands, trying to get people to pay attention. I don't think anyone else talked about it because that incentivized expansion that incentivized consolidation. That was just another log on the fire. Because now, as you go to a bigger conference, that's not going to hurt you. In fact, you could use some of that playoff Power 5 money to siphon off from a new member onto the current members. That's what I thought the Pac-12 was going to do. That's, so we've been over that over and over again on this channel. I think the new twist to all this, Immaculate, is we might be down to 4 power conferences. We might be changing. This is the question I have for you. We might be changing the playoffs here next for 2024, the expanded playoffs, where there's 6 at large, 6 automatic berths. The 6 automatic berths go to the top 6 ranked conference championships. Greg Sankey says we may have to take a look at it. We may have to change it. They may go to 5 automatic berths because we might go from 10 FBS conferences to 9. We may do that. We may do that depending on if the Pac-4 schools can rebuild their conference. And that means there's going to be a lot more ripple effects with realignment going through the G5 conferences. But if you do that, if you adjust the playoffs for 2024, 2025, don't you need consensus to change it? Don't you need everybody to agree with it? Because you had to before, because it was under an old contract, you were changing an old contract. Don't you need total consensus? Unlike 2026, where you don't need total consensus?
Well, total consensus is necessary. Now, are you saying that in 2026, the voting apparatus within the college football playoff system is going to change?
I don't believe you're going to need... Yes, it very well possibly could. We don't know what it's going to look like for 2026. They're starting to... They're going to... Tony Petitti, I think he said something today. It's going to be rough negotiations, right? It's going to be...
Yeah.
It's going to be dramatic. But that's for 2026 and beyond. We know about that. That's the great gold rush.
Right.
I'm talking 2024, 2025. Are we going to change it? And if we are, does it need to be a total consensus? I think it does. And if it needs total consensus to change it, why would those G5 conference commissioners vote to change it? I think they would love to keep the 6 automatic berths. So I don't know. I
agree with you.
Yeah.
The only reason I was asking about that is because I agree with you that their natural inkling would be to keep it as is, and they do have a vote in it. So the only way I could see them to vote against their own interest on 24 and 25 is if they get something for the negotiation of 26. And that's why I'm asking, are they part of that too? Are they getting kicked out of that? Is it changing? If they're part of that too in 26, then yes, I could see them giving way in 24 and 25 because that's just 2 years. Yeah, you're going to lose out on money there, and the others are going to get the short-term money that they need right now to make some of these moves that they're trying to do. But then that means the G6 is getting some kind of favor in return in 2026. So that's what I'm saying. When they're redoing this whole thing in 26, I think people are going to be shocked as to how much of a place on it the G5s have. I'm not saying how much because I'm not there, but because you're right. You're dead on right. There's no reason for them to vote to go from 6-6 to 7-5 unless they get something for it.
Yeah. It's it's.
I don't know much more on it than that. I just found that article.
I appreciate it.
It is stuff that you've been talking about, and you're aware of it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of aware of the stuff, but I think just for like the general population who all seem to just be dying for this content and dying to know what's going on, I think that is an excellent article for someone to read and just kind of get and to have an episode on. You could do that just on your own because it is Dennis Dodds, and that guy is pretty well connected.
Yep. All right. I appreciate it, Immaculate. I will hit that article and see what I can come up with.
And my call on that is I'm still saying the AAC has the lead on this thing, but
Got it.
maybe the Pac-12 pulls them in. So,
Okay.
but with that, man, talking to you. Have yourself a good night.
Appreciate it. Great call once again. Appreciate it. Yeah, we did talk AAR about, we put up those letters from Oregon State President Murphy. Since I last updated you immediately following the sudden events of the destabilized Pac-12 conference 1 week ago, we are making progress in defining Oregon State University's best path forward. We continue to believe that preserving the Pac-12 is in the best interest of Oregon State student athletes and the remaining universities, and so we are doing everything in our control to stabilize and rebuild the conference. We went over that early in the show. Oregon State's president speaks out. So we are going to continue to follow this story. It looks like it's going to go on for a while, which is a little bit of a surprise to me. Because you got to believe these media companies, they're pushing for resolution. They want this realignment wave to finally stop. Let's end this. But it sounds like Oregon State, Washington State, California, and Stanford are not going to be making any quick decisions. Or are they? I don't know. We shall see. But Oregon State's president is saying we are going to do everything we can to rebuild this conference. For me, that means poaching or merging. But those four schools are going to call the shots on a merger. And I don't know if they are in position to do that. I don't know if that would sit well with the AAC schools. I don't know if that will sit well with the Mountain West Conference schools. We do have a split here in the PATC community in regards who has the upper hand between Mountain West Conference and AAC in reining in those four Pac-4 schools. Wow, a lot of drama, a lot of cloak and dagger behind the scenes. We at PATC, we're going to keep poking, we're going to keep prodding, we're going to see if we can get some intel. But I got to tell you, when people say things are fluid, they're volatile. We don't know. A lot of it has to do with the media companies behind the scenes, the personalities behind the scenes. Stanford, you are you are the next domino to fall. Where Stanford falls, what they decide to do is going to mean everything. In the ACC, it looks like they're coming up just a little bit short of expanding with California, with Stanford. It looks like they're coming up short. Report after report. Sounds like there's 4 solid votes no. And one of them has to flip for ACC to expand. Jim Phillips, the commissioner, is working, showing projections, showing schedules on how it would all work. But right now, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and North Carolina State are all voting no on further expansion. And August 15th, we are 4 days away. Does Florida State send a withdrawal notice to the ACC before or on August 15th to withdraw from the conference? People are starting to lean no. Maybe they're not going to do it. But man, did we get a lot of strong words from the Board of Trustees. They're going to be making decisions soon. Either way, stick or go. What do you all think? What do you all think that Florida State is about to do or is not about to do? Do they wait to the first quarter of 2024 like we were told to peek around the corner on December 26, 2022 when we reported it? Or are they gonna speed it up and do it now before August 15th or on August 15th? If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button if you have enjoyed our content and our show today. We appreciate you all coming in. Friday evening, we had to do a live show. Oregon State's president spoke. And they are determined the Beavers, the Cougars, they are determined to preserve the Pac-12 and to rebuild it once again. Holy smokes. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you.